Hey guys, this chapter we're going to focus on carbohydrates and specifically on sugars. I know that the fats chapter was pretty difficult, but don't worry about it. We're not going to hit chemistry nearly as hard this chapter. So to start out, what is a carbohydrate? A carbohydrate is a molecule made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. All carbohydrates are made of building blocks called monosaccharides. So these are monosaccharides. Monosaccharides are a simple carbohydrate. They are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, just like all carbohydrates are, and they form a ring structure. Now, you can tell it's a monosaccharide, so the prefix mono means one, and it's a monosaccharide because it has one ring. So if you look down here, these are some common monosaccharides that we see in food: glucose, fructose, and galactose. You don't need to remember those names, but do remember that they have one ring, and that makes them monosaccharides. So if you look here, these ones have, one of them has five points on the ring, two of them have 6 points on their ring. No matter what it is, if it's a monosaccharide, it only has one ring in it. So our next type of carbohydrate is a disaccharide. The prefix di means two. So a disaccharide is two monosaccharides linked together. So here we see glucose and glucose, and they link together to make maltose. And you see maltose has two rings in it, two rings with 6 points each. That makes it a disaccharide. Here are a couple more examples of disaccharides: sucrose and lactose. And these are the main disaccharides you see in food. Once again, I don't need you to remember the names, just remember that if it has two rings, it's a disaccharide. And at the bottom here, you see that side note. Typically, the word sugar refers to a monosaccharide or a disaccharide. So monosaccharides and disaccharides are simple sugars. They're very small. They're much smaller than the next type we're going to talk about, which are polysaccharides. And so typically the word sugar is talking about those small ones, the simple ones. So let's go ahead and take a look at polysaccharides. Poly, the prefix poly, means many. So a polysaccharide contains many monosaccharides linked together. So go ahead and look at this picture on the left. You can see that it still has those same 6-membered rings that we saw on our first slide with the monosaccharides. But there are a lot more of them attached to each other than we saw in monosaccharides or disaccharides. If you look on the right, you can see that polysaccharides can have either a long, straight structure like amylose on the top, or they can branch out more like amylopectin. Polysaccharides in food, typically we're talking about either starch or fiber. Now starch we talked a little bit about in our chapter about thickeners. Starch is a digestible polysaccharide, and fiber, on the other hand, is not digestible. The body doesn't have enzymes that can digest fiber, and so fiber just goes in one end and out the other. Both starch and fiber are mostly found in plants, and animals and humans have their own type of polysaccharides, but you really don't see those in foods. So really in food, when we're talking about a polysaccharide, it's starch or it's fiber. So I believe that's the end of this chapter, or this section of the chapter. So next you're going to look at some of the functions of sugars in food.